advice do you have to homeowners?
Practicing that preparedness, starting the conversation now is always going to be a benefit to any association out there.
Welcome to the Global Pros deep dive into relevant business and insurance topics. We're live on the Recovery Report. Very exciting lineup we have today. I have a guest joining us later in the broadcast that I'm super excited to have on. She shares a wealth of knowledge and has been in the industry for quite some time, so can't wait to introduce her and ask her some great questions about all things going on in the Community Association Institute world. But before we get there, I want to talk about some of the recent events that have occurred here in the in our country. Obviously, we're all experiencing a little bit of election fatigue. We've been dealing with any number of issues surrounding that election, whether it's the lawsuits being filed or the counting the votes or someone's declaring victory and others are not, to just sitting on the edge of our seat. How is our markets going to respond to those things? And what does that mean for our business communities? What does that mean for those that have significant investments, long-term retirement plans, et cetera, real estate, so many different industries that are watching us so closely, and has so many implications as to what's going to go on in the future. Most analysts would agree. But it is November, so we're not surprised because more than anything else, it is still 2020. And 2020 has been full of surprises. And so I don't think anyone would expect anything different, being as that we had an election this year, that it's not ripe with its issues and controversies. And we'll see where it plays out. Very interesting to see the turn of events from day to day. But along the lines of interesting things and trends that are going on, we still have those insurance companies out there that are still trying to convince people that pandemic claims are not covered. Constantly an evolving issue. They somehow forgot that there's an or between loss or damage. They've seemingly forgot that they did not include the readily available endorsement to exclude coverage. There's any number of reasons why business owners are right to say that they bought a policy to protect them from losses like these, and they're entitled to coverage. Unfortunately, case law or arguments that are being made with regards to the way things potentially just maybe because they were pled by lawyers and those that are representing or maybe advocating on behalf of consumers when they probably didn't practice in this area or pled it wrong the first time. But in some of the instances, you're seeing things get filed differently. You think there's a trend towards helping some consumers, but I think more than anything else, the one thing that Global Pro has been right on from day one was that each of these cases is going to be judged based on its individual merits, whether it's policy conditions, whether it's going to be jurisdictional issues, whether it's the orders that were entered by local governments. All these things, again, need to be judged on individual merits, need to see how they implicate and how the policy should respond to those losses. Especially when you have insurance companies that are refusing to do physical inspections. You have insurance companies that are not considering the physical changes that have been made to the properties in order to operate, whether it's digital menus to plexiglass to having no use of the actual interior of the actual restaurants themselves, and on and on and on. So we're seeing those things. But along with the rise of the confusing response by the insurance industry, who claims to have massive losses despite raising rates from the pandemic, we see a rising dissatisfaction amongst policyholders for unfair claims settlements, and it's an issue that we talked about in our prior broadcast. We talked about a report from Value Penguin, available on our website. Check it out in the resource section. Definitely interesting to see more than 68% of people complaining about the claims settlements and payments. And here you have an insurance company, the insurance industry at large, responding very negatively to these claims as a result of the pandemic. So again, stuff we need to track. Doesn't mean that all claims are covered. We certainly would agree that there are policies out there that specifically exclude certain coverages. It doesn't mean that that policyholders should get something for nothing. But in the event that there is no exclusion for the losses being claimed, step up and pay. it certainly can help all of us in our communities and our industry and our economy. And I say industry because I think a lot of insurance agencies are feeling the burn from it as well. They thought they sold good products. They may have even convinced their policyholders in some instances to pay more for something. But when they made the claim, it didn't pay them anything. And the latest, I'd say, the latest insurance squeeze seems to be from a recent insurance company that had an IPO, Lemonade. The company's largely focused on renters in urban areas. And you may be wondering why we're talking about it, because we largely handle community association and business owner claims. But the fact of the matter is that a lot of the occupants in these community associations may be interested in obtaining insurance from a company like Lemonade. And when you have damages in property, like a tower, a community association that's a tower and multiple units in a chain get damaged, you may find yourselves in a situation where a unit owner has a policy sold by Lemonade or their competitors, and there's always some confusion around tenant and unit owner obligations, or entitlements to recoveries, or what they can claim for. Ultimately, especially in the southeastern United States, I would say South Florida particularly, we see a lot of tenants without insurance, but those that do get it, it still creates some controversy over whether or not the association's policy should step up, pay the claims, et cetera, et cetera. But the one thing I found interesting in a recent article in Property Casualty 360 is that they're quoted as saying that the one issue that they're seeing most often with these policies, that most of their insureds don't actually know how to get a hold of them, and that's seemingly one of the biggest complaints right now. Is that the consumer, and I'll quote it, "It would appear that consumers aren't choosing Lemonade for carriers' ability to provide great insurance, but rather to solve the inconvenient problem of satisfying a third-party requirement." And in that same article where that quote was stated, they talk about this issue of being able to get in touch with someone. And the reason why I provided that quote is that the convenience factor, and in talking about another trend here, which is that as we go into a hard market and we have some issues, a lot of times I see even our own clients decide on product based on price, not based on actual what it's going to provide them in the event that they have a loss and how it's going to protect them. And there's a lot of marketing and advertising around this idea about saving time and money, but very little focus on actually paying. And so if we can kind of get back to a little bit more about why we're buying insurance and why we need this in the first place, and why a third-party vendor or third-party such as a landlord will require it, it's so that in the event that something happens, you can continue to be able to pay your rent, and so that you're not taking money that will otherwise go to paying it, and you use it to buy new product or repair your building or whatever obligations you have under your lease. So it's interesting that we're again highlighting this trend as we are dealing with a hard market and a bad economic times. It's kind of a reminder that we need to consider why we're actually getting the insurance in the first place. And if you can't get a hold of your insurance company, then you might want to think twice about the direction you're going, or ask those questions first. What happens if a claim happens? Who do I contact? How do I do that? Save and store that information. It's not to say that Lemonade's doing a bad job at it. It's not to say that they're doing anything they shouldn't be doing. It's just the fact is that most people, when they're doing this, they're doing it to comply with that third party. They're not doing this because they ever think they're going to have a loss. But when they do, they kind of forget or don't know what to do next. So plan for the unexpected. That's why you're getting the insurance. Just a little bit of a reminder there. And I think it will go a long way to helping community associations and educating its unit owners if they are seeing trends where unit owners or tenants are starting to buy insurance using these platforms. is to remind them about their obligations if a loss does happen, and maybe even go research yourself and provide that information to the unit owners so that they know what to do, so that in the heat of the moment there's not a lot of frustration boiling over, and you start to do this whole infighting thing, which certainly will not result in anything that's to anyone's benefit. So I think those are a lot of really good good issues, and I think that's it's something that a lot of us need to think more about as property managers, as owners, operators of commercial real estate or residential properties. Certainly something that can certainly help you get through an issue such as dealing with those problems. One of the things that we see some of these community associations suffer from is erroneous claims on general liability. A lot of this brought on by this idea of having these inferior insurance policies or not having access to the information you need in order to make a claim. So make sure that you highlight that for them and help them through those processes in getting those things. So that's a little bit about some of the things that we see going on, some of the focus that I have for you this morning, and talking about some of the things that I think are relevant to the community associations, but in line with those trends and recent changes in the community association world. We have a very special guest today, someone that's a friend of Global Pro, certainly someone that has helped me early on while I got into this, into serving the needs and interests of community associations. I've always considered my membership of the Community Association Institute important. I certainly think it has contributed to my success, and I certainly don't say that just because we have the Southeast Chapter Executive Director joining us today. But I say it because I believe it, and I'm excited to have Jill on today, who has a wealth of knowledge and experience, certainly dealing with vendors like myself and others, and also she's got a very pretty face to look at. So Jill, thank you so much for joining us. You certainly make me look better in this broadcast. How are you this morning?
I'm great, Dan. Thank you very much for your beautiful compliments, and thank you for having me.
So Jill, so I actually had this question for you because I'm interested. How did you get involved in Community Association Institute, and why?
Well, funny story. My background is actually in banking. I was in banking for about 20 years, 25 years. And I served on my board at my homeowners association for many years. And one of my fellow board members, a friend of mine, who I believe you've had on your show, Marcy Cravat, approached me and said, I have this opportunity that you might be interested in. It's a very part-time little gig, maybe 10, 20 hours a week. And I had just left my last banking position. And I said, well, let me think about it. And I interviewed and sounded like a perfect fit. And the rest, as I say, is 14 years of history.
That's for sure. No, I know Marcy very well, certainly an advocate of ours as well. And I'm working with her right now and dealing with one of the properties that she recommended contact us. So that's interesting. Very, very cool. I mean, small world, right? And that's what we always say that in business. Build bridges, don't burn them down, and you never know how that's going to connect you again. So
That's for sure.
Yeah, that's for sure. I think, unfortunately, I think a lot of community association vendors and property managers sometimes don't prescribe to that, and there's a lot of heated competition, and I feel like we can build more together than we can if we're divided. Maybe that's a lesson for our country right now, but we'll get to that. Certainly don't want to turn this into a political conversation. So what has been the biggest change over the years for Community Association Institute in your 14 years that you've seen?
I think really the biggest change is the growth in the industry. Probably lended itself because of all the growth in Miami, especially. The condo industry has just exploded. So, and in my 14 years, our membership has more than doubled, like 2.5 times. So I think that's one of the biggest things that I have seen is the major growth that has been involved in the Southeast industry or Southeast area.
Yeah, we can all certainly attest to that in the Southeast region. I mean, I feel like every time you look at the skyline, how different it is literally from year to year. And if you took a 14-year snapshot in your time with CAI, I mean, I could only imagine. That's it's some incredible time to actually get involved in the organization. Certainly, you've seen the rise and fall of some of these projects, and then how they've been rebuilt from there. So amongst the community association members and vendors, what are some of the trends that you're seeing as far as engagement with CAI, and how are you dealing with some of the changes? Obviously, we're in a very tech-savvy world where we're doing a lot of digital, engaging each other digitally, I think in large part thanks to the pandemic. But what are some of the trends that you're seeing with your members and their likes and dislikes or interests?
Well, I think even prior to the pandemic, the shift to more social media, people relying more on social media and that type of marketing, we've seen that, and now even more so since the pandemic, I think. And I'm going to probably say this 20 times during this conversation, but Zoom, Zoom, Zoom. Who would have thunk that we would have been so engrossed in that? And it's really gone over well, I have to say, even for like old folks like me, it's something that was easily adaptable, I think, and welcomed.
Yeah, I think Zoom has given a lot of people an opportunity to engage a wider, bigger audience if you've taken advantage of it and got in early on in the pandemic. And I think it's a tool that a lot of, especially in the management world, where you have these particularly management companies where their properties are all over the place, right? And they had to call they were just got into the rhythm of calling these meetings, and you had to travel to get to the meeting. You took a whole day, you did stuff. And getting some feedback from some of the larger management companies as some of the things that they learned or took away from the pandemic and are thankful for is that how it forced them to use Zoom and these online platforms which they can connect on, and while it was usually like a half a day or an all-day event, now it's a 15-30 minute meeting, and they can kind of get back to and they feel like they're being more productive. I certainly think there's some drawbacks to that with that personal touch and being around people. God knows I am a social human being and like to be around people, so I think a little mix of it would be good, right? 2021, we hope.
And that's what I was going to say. I think it's going to be a hybrid. I really do. I think it's going to definitely stick, and it will be a hybrid of in-person and Zoom type platform meetings.
Yeah, no, I think as we get into the reshaping of our new normal, I think I couldn't agree with you more. Speaking of that, and speaking of reshaping, speaking of the pandemic, how do you think it's going to impact Community Association Institute in the future? What changes do you perceive in the future for CAI?
Well, I'm hoping that the first quarter of next year we can get back to business, which is, really the mainstay of our business is education and networking. Education we've been able to provide, just as we just spoke about. We were having educational classes since April, like on a weekly, bi-weekly, and then maybe 3 times, whatever. So we've been able to maintain that with Zoom, but we're dying to get back to our networking, in-person networking, and that's, God willing, this pandemic will be over with, but that's what we're looking forward to for 2021 is the trend of going back to normalcy.
Yeah, I know, and I certainly miss my CA breakfasts in the morning. Those you got to get up early, and you got to get there. But There's always been a benefit to that, and certainly with some of the best networking I've done is then, because I feel like the phone isn't really ringing that early in the morning anyway, so you can kind of utilize that opportunity to meet and greet and do those things. So certainly looking forward to the first one. But let's talk about some. I'm a vendor, obviously. The services, community associations, Global Pro's been doing that many years now. We represent, literally thousands of community associations. What are some of the mistakes that you see vendors make when they join CAI?
I think some of the mistakes are, number one, I get questioned very frequently, Jill, how many managers or board members are going to be attending this event? And I think that a lot of business partners are under the impression that that is their biggest source of referral source. And I tend to think that sometimes it's your business partner, just like, for you to meet up with insurance folks and any type of industry, even attorneys would be a very good referral source for you. So I think that's the biggest mistake. They come in thinking, oh, I've got to get to the managers, I've got to get to the board members. You need to look at your next door neighbor at a trade show. They could be your biggest referral source. And also sometimes business partners come into the membership and think, well, now that I'm a member, I'm going to have people flocking to me. No, you really have to forge those relationships and, work. I hate to say it, but work for.
Make the effort. Yeah, make the effort. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I think that's true with any organization, whether it's a chamber, CAI. You do see a lot of, dead fish moves. That's what I like to call them, where they come in and they sit down and they park themselves, right? They don't.
Wait for people to come to them.
Right. Yeah. It's like, no, you got to actually get up, or just the mere association, being able to put it on your website or whatever brochure you have. You gotta avoid those things. So that obviously is an issue. But how can members take advantage of their membership more than they are?
Well, again, they have to take advantage of all of our events that we have and come and mingle and show their face. And another big thing is presenting education.
Yeah.
That's an awesome way for people. And I'm always looking for new people to offer those services for if they have the wherewithal, to be able to offer the CEU courses. So that really is one of the biggest ways also to have your name out there. And
yeah, I think, and I will say this to my fellow vendors, that just because a topic may not be relevant to what you're trying to sell or offer, doesn't mean you shouldn't show up, because what you may learn from another vendor, you may be able to use or collaborate with that vendor in the future just by knowing what they do. And sometimes that while you're not there to earn your CE classes, CE credits as a vendor, you may be able to take from their presentation, maybe further adapt your own, or you have no idea how many ideas I've come up with in sitting in talks about collections or things, just random, one was about valet parking. I distinctively remember, but I figured out a way to collaborate with that valet parking company at an upcoming event where we were hosting people and we needed valet service. We were like, oh man, wow, I didn't know he was there. He's a CAI member. Why don't we, work together? And we started doing it. I also had a major loss in a building where they lost use of their actual parking garage and they didn't have valet. So now they needed to bring it in, and I was able to contact him and get pricing and then connect them. So I think the networking goes far beyond, or the opportunities go far beyond just simply being there when you need to be there, and certainly avoiding that dead fish. So, and when going in and parking yourself in your seat, certainly not what to do. So tell, for our audience, how can they get in contact with CAI in their local chapter?
Well, you can access the website. That's the best way. Call me. Our website is cai-ca.org. seflorida.org. And my phone number is 954-816-0661. I'm always ready, willing, and able to talk to anyone about CAI, one of my favorite things in the world. And I just wanted to mention too, we were talking about CAI and how you can use CAI.
Yeah.
To me, I've seen over the 14 years, many of the same people that keep coming back, business partners and managers. And believe it or not, I've seen some marriages happen due to the relationships and the rapport and
Yeah.
that they forged. So it's really a cool thing to see that.
CAI dating. I roundtable. Yeah, promoting that. I guess that's an easy way to get them to buy in heavy on the organization. Keep them coming. That's fantastic. Definitely a surprise. And I was going to ask, what are the top 3 benefits of joining CAI as a vendor? And I certainly think that goes at the top. Yeah. Are there 2 others that you can think of?
Benefits. Well, basically just exposure of yourself to the industry, and forging those long-standing relationships, and education, like we've been talking about.
Yeah.
And I do find, as you were saying, like things that you've listened to and come up with on your own or for your own well-being. Most of our business partners that do attend the CEUs, they do stay and they do listen and pay attention and get something out of it. So that's a neat thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, tell us about some of the, we've talked about, this idea of kind of getting back to new normal. I know there's some things in the pipeline already. I guess share with us some of the upcoming events with CAI that our audience and members can get involved in.
Well, we're having our holiday party, a social distanced holiday party. So we're limiting it to 50 to 60 guests at Grateful Palate on December 2nd. So that'll be besides our golf tournament, which we discussed, that'll be our first and only in-person for 2020, the remainder of 2020. And then we're going to continue with our education, of course, and online education. And I'm hoping that first quarter, even maybe January, February, we'll get back into the normal business of CAI.
And for all those that did not make the golf event, I definitely encourage you to attend the upcoming holiday party, because if the golf event was any indication of how things are going to be, it was awesome. And certainly glad I got to spend a short time there. And to see everyone's eyes, if you will, in most situations. I'd say smiling faces, but unfortunately, we're in a lot of masks these days. Yeah, so it was a lot of fun, and again, any indication of what's to come. Fantastic job, Jill, always. Very complimentary, guys. And I have to ask, Jill, and I know we don't want to talk about it because we're so late in the season here. Are you ready for the hurricane?
Absolutely not. And I'm
Yeah.
and I'm praying and keeping every finger crossed that something happens, that it doesn't veer this way. But the only thing that I'm a little concerned with is we're so heavily focused on the election right now that people are just going to be so complacent with preparing. So I hope that's not the case if we do get a little hit.
And that is solid advice. And on that note, Jill, thank you so much for, and thank you to you and all of our attendees tuned in this week. We want to encourage everyone actually to go online at getglobalpro.com and check out our resource section to learn about how to be prepared. There's all kinds of great information there. We're going to be updating it with all the latest Hurricane Eta information. We're going to be tracking it and making sure that our community is ready and that it has all the information it needs in order to quickly rebound from this major loss. But if we could take anything away from what we saw in Louisiana and all of the Gulf states that have been heavily impacted by storm after storm after storm, the times are different. The pandemic creates a whole lot of problems. It's very costly. It's very slow. And I would encourage all of you to take measures now to get yourself in a situation that if you're even remotely or possibly in the path of the storm, to get all the supplies and information you need in order to be prepared. And if you need any assistance with that, feel free to contact us at 855-487-7475. That's 855-487-7475. Or go online at getglobalpro.com. Again, check out the resource section. Be sure to check out us on YouTube, where you'll see this broadcast and all other broadcasts, all of our past guests. Like us, follow us, and engage us on all the social media platforms. We honestly love to connect with our clients, all of our viewers, all of our attendees on all these shows and others. We want to make sure that you have all the information you need as a business owner, as a community association, in dealing with anything related to insurance, whether it's ideas about how to operate in these new times, how to obtain new insurance, trends that we're seeing out there. We are workshopping these things, talking, getting out in the community, and talking about real issues that impact all of us, and we want to continue doing all that. And I want to remind everyone to tune in next week. We have a very interesting show, something I'm certainly really looking forward to. We have Hector with Cocktail Cartel, who's going to be joining us to talk about our upcoming collaborations. And the whole point of this is actually to make you think differently. How can you continue as a business owner engaging your audience and your clientele and keeping things interesting? And he's going to go through some of the things that he's doing, some of the things that we're doing, some of the things that we're doing together to do that. And I would absolutely encourage all of you guys to do that. Again, thank you, Jill, and all those that tuned in today. And join us next week on the Recovery Report Live.